Recording.
All right. So let me see. Nope. I don't even know what I'm sharing anymore. All right. Hold on. Now you guys disappeared. I don't miss this. I don't know if you guys taught through the pandemic. I
I
do
did.
not miss this.
It was
Oh,
terrible.
I taught middle school through the pandemic and it was awful. Okay. So I work in a 7th and 8th grade building, but I had to pull data from everywhere, from high school down. So I was focusing on the English learner population and the disproportionality in their educational opportunities. They are the most rapidly growing population in my district, and they're increasing between like 1 and 1.5% every year. So they're on a steady incline, like even compared to disability students with disabilities, compared to like children that are struggling financially. They are just blowing all of them out of the water. So they're graduating at 76% compared to their peers at 93%. 24% of them are dropping out before they even graduate. They face gaps in curriculum and implementation. And this goes for like ELs and bilingual learners. They struggle most in their comprehension. So I noticed when I went digging just from that basic data, the curriculum is not vertically aligned. So the curriculum that they're getting in elementary school is very structured. They have all the push-in support in all of their subjects. They have pull-out support. It's all sheltered instruction. And then when they get to middle school and junior high school, they don't offer any push-out support in any subject for any of them, because I work in the junior high 7th and 8th. They pull out for English learners, which replace their ELA class for kids that are tier 4. So these are kids that need the least support, and they're pulling them out of their ELA class. They're pulling them out and they're missing an hour worth of their electives. So they're not even spending the amount of time they should with their peers. And then by the time they get to high school, there's absolutely no bilingual classes. So even the kids that like transfer into our district, say in 7th grade or 8th grade, they go freshman year and there's no support. There's no bilingual classes. And then there's only support for tier 3 and tier 4 English learners. And it's only pull-out support for the kids that need it the least. So it's really chaotic and all over the place. The secondary grades, I also found out from interviewing teachers, because they were willing to work with me and answer questions. Like admin was definitely difficult to get a hold of. 7th and 8th in high school, they didn't offer tutoring, homework help, target tutoring, or exposure to high level courses like they did for their peers. I collected everything off the Department of Ed site. iReady Diagnostic we use, and just interviews with teachers. So in my SIP, I focused on vertically aligning the curriculum, revising the curriculum to align objectives with NJSLS standards and elements of access testing. So that's their WIDA testing. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it. I noticed that WIDA to pass, it's a 4.5, and not any of the grade levels in the entire district have scored over a 2.5. So they're not even hitting any target scores whatsoever in speaking, listening, writing, reading, comprehension, nothing. I also incorporated push-in support in all of their classes and stopped pulling out the highest tier students that need less support and only pull out the lower tier students. I would have all students take an advanced ELA class with push-in support before they go to high school. And then all students would have the opportunity to attend some kind of tutoring or homework help if they saw fit. And then I would offer target tutoring based on their iReady diagnostic from October to May during their study hall. I guess, do we just want to talk about like important lessons we learned at the end as a discussion?
Sure.
I mean, you already have it up, so we'll just couple that with our
Okay, that's fine. So digging for issues, especially disproportionality related to fragility, was difficult to find people on board for me to have conversations with, especially in the summer. Gathering data without access to internal NJSLA scores was really difficult. Sifting through data and locating issues and finding the root cause was difficult for me to complete in a 7-week time frame. I feel that it's easier when you're continuously monitoring data and, revising practices, like Fergus stated. It's much easier to do when you're doing it over a course of months and years. Through this process, I've come across many articles with similar issues to mine and how they are combating them successfully. So I want to continue to monitor those schools and see what their outcomes are. That's it.
Nice. Well done.
Thank you.
All right, so for my needs assessment and my school improvement plan, what I focused on most was our ELA curriculum and how there seemed to be a disproportionality with our special education population. I was able to look at NJSLA scores. I was able to look at iReady data. And what I noticed was there were a lot of special education students who were not meeting or exceeding expectations, but they also weren't even close. And there was over half of the special education population that wasn't meeting or exceeding target goals. And there were over half that weren't falling where they should in the iReady data. So that's what I wanted to focus on because I'm elementary and iReady is so heavily used for our elementary school students, even as young as kindergarten. So when I looked at the iReady data, I noticed that there's not really a set standard for our district to say, okay, you have ELA for 90 minutes a day. You have to use iReady for a certain amount of time. So it was really just a preference for each grade level. So all the grade level teachers would meet and say, okay, we'll do iReady this amount of time on Mondays and Wednesdays. So when I looked into the ELA data from the K through 5 supervisor for ELA, she had it broken down where they actually are doing this special program called My Learning Path. And that's a personalized program for each student. So based on, I don't know if you guys are familiar with iReady, but they have like the mini lessons that they do. And then they do the diagnostic assessments. We do it 3 times a year before NJSLA. So what was happening was their mini lessons were giving them specific skills that they needed to work on in My Learning Path, but then they weren't giving them enough time to focus on My Learning Path and the skills that they needed to work on. They were giving them 30 to 45 minutes every Friday. And that was, if we didn't even have a school on Friday, they wouldn't be doing it. So I looked at all the data to see, okay, special education students are not getting the time they need, the resources they need, the intervention time they need to really work on their reading comprehension and their writing skills, which is what was really lacking on the NJSLA. And there were a lot of special education students who weren't close to even being at grade level in their reading and writing. So I noticed that the root cause was the gaps in curriculum and instructional implementation. And it really all had to do with that iReady and My Learning Path. So what I proposed in my school improvement plan was to have a standard for how often that's implemented in their ELA block. So they do have it 90 minutes a day. And the proposal was to do It was to incorporate the iReady program for 45 minutes, 4 days a week. So instead of some grades were getting it twice a week and some weren't even focusing on the My Learning Path, then with this new proposal and the SMART goals, they would have it at least 4 times a week for 45 minutes. So they'd have the time both in their general education classes and in their pull-out resource intervention blocks to focus on their iReady and their specific personalized skills that they need to work on. And by doing all of that and incorporating some professional development, then we're looking at raising not only NJSLA scores, but also having those special education students by the end of the year moving up a grade level in reading comprehension and writing on iReady. And also having less students, I guess, be referred to special education, because on iReady, at least in our district, if they fall below the 30th percentile by like March, they're referred to special education automatically. So having that timeline by March, having them practice more of their reading and writing, getting them above that 30th percentile, so there's not as much of a referral to have students enter special education. So that was my school improvement plan. And then I guess the important lessons. Me being a phys ed teacher, I never would have known any of this before diving into this project. So it really helped to see what's going on outside of my gym and see what's going on in the classrooms and really focus on the standards and academic achievement related to math and reading and writing. And I really would never have focused on it if it wasn't for this. I really wouldn't have known the process of referring special education students or really what they do in their classroom and how long their intervention blocks are. So it really helped to give me a new perspective on what students are doing, because elementary school was so long ago. I don't even remember doing any of this, but it helps to really understand them as an overall student.
Okay, so my school is Robbinsville High School. It's in a suburban area in Robbinsville, New Jersey. It's pretty high performing in terms of science and technology related courses. Our school really focuses on academic performance a lot as like their it's what makes Robbinsville Robbinsville. The community is very involved and they like to see the high achieving students too. So for my school improvement plan and for my needs assessment, I tried to focus specifically on the link between the chronic absenteeism at the high school and the low math achievement scores, because we have to keep this related to academic student academic achievement. So personally, I'm a science teacher. I teach biology and anatomy and phys. So looking at the link between the absenteeism and math was a nice little perspective change. I have been seeing some links in the classroom, like scientific concepts where students are struggling with math skills. So that's just another thing that I was able to pull from, I guess, like experience with this. Like you guys, I did not have a lot of access or support in terms of the data that I was able to use and acquire for this. So I really relied heavily on a few things: the civil rights data collection available online and the New Jersey Department of Education performance reports for Robbinsville High School. So that's, for the most part, where I pulled most of my data. So again, the link for this and the focus is the link between chronic absenteeism and the low math achievement rates on the NJSLA. So I noticed particular trends in the data, especially in Algebra 1, which we know is that baseline, that foundational skill set where students need to learn these skills in that very systematic approach, chunking, learning it in a process. Now, in the data that was available, it showed that only about 23% of our students met or exceeded the expectations in Algebra 1 on that portion of the NJSLA. That 23% being a reduced percentage from the 35% state average. So right away, that's below average. And again, between that and the chronic absenteeism, I've found that link, and I wanted to focus more on it. I feel like it's important. Now, in the data, I also saw some other achievement gaps, particularly between the demographics at Robbinsville. There's also a little bit of a gender gap in terms of testing performances, but I address all that in my school improvement plan. Really, the focus was between the chronic absenteeism and the math achievement scores. Now, to address these issues in my school improvement plan, I chose to focus on 3 primary goals, the first of which involving implementing a pretty comprehensive math curriculum review and alignment, that vertical alignment process, where I'm also focusing on specific targeted professional development for our math teachers, really trying to improve the skill set of our teachers and staff, as well as the learning ability and capacity for the students in the classroom. But you guys are teachers just like I am, and we know that students need to learn by being in the classroom, and absenteeism just plays another negative factor in this whole process. So that brings me to the second goal, where I planned on introducing an early identification and intervention system for students who are at risk for chronic absenteeism and low math performance. So what this looks like is an online tracking system for students who they flag the system with either the chronic absenteeism or the low math achievement scores. Maybe they skipped math class a few times, and that needs to be identified and dealt with. For my last goal, I wanted to focus primarily on the differentiated instructional strategies for our teachers who are teaching students with disabilities. I noticed a significant achievement gap, about 30% difference between state average and how our students with disabilities are actually testing on the NJSLA math portion. That was a lot. But again, this entire thing was very data-driven with the data that was available to me. Let's see. So that was the school improvement plan portion. Are we going over the most important lessons? Are we doing that now too?
Yep.
Okay. So for me, one of the most important lessons that I learned throughout the course, not just through the school improvement plan, even though I did struggle through the school improvement plan itself, I feel like what I produced at the end was pretty decent. But one of the most important lessons that I learned was actually the essential role of bias-based beliefs. This is something that I was not totally aware of, or I wasn't very familiar with until starting this class and going through the Fergus text and understanding the idea of disproportionality. So the bias-based beliefs and disproportionality, personally, I feel like that really resonated well with me. All right, I think that's pretty much all I've got.